Okay, we are ready to call the meeting to order.
Okay, thank you. Chairman Meyer is unable to make the meeting today, so I've been asked to chair this meeting. Agenda item 1 is the call to order. It is 9:30 a.m. on May 19th, 2022. I call this meeting of the Citizens Clean Elections Commission to order. I would like to ask audience members to please keep their microphones on mute. And with that, we will take attendance. Commissioners, please identify yourselves for the record.
I'm Amy Chan.
Galen Payton.
And I am Mark Kimball. We do have a quorum present. Item 2, discussion possible action on minutes for the March 24th, 22 meeting. We all got those minutes with our material. Is there any discussion about the minutes?
I move that we adopt the minutes as written.
Thank you. And that motion was made by Commissioner Chan. Is there a second?
It's a second. Galen Payton.
Thank you. I will call the roll on approval of the minutes. Commissioner Chan.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Payton.
Aye.
And I'm Mark Kimball, and I vote aye too. Item 3, discussion and possible action on the executive director's report. Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. As you can see, it's been a little while since we met, so there was quite a bit of activity we had that we wanted to report on. I first want to, as we did in the report, I want to highlight the fact that Avery Zolo, who's our voter education manager, was accepted into the Flynn Brown Fellows Program, and as the report details, that's a highly selective fellowship program that where Avery will be able to meet with and be engaged in a professional development with a lot of different aspects of state government and experts in that area, which we think and we have been lucky, and well, I've been lucky, and I think that we've been benefited. Obviously, the commission and the state have benefited from the fact that we've had a number of employees who've been selected for this program over the past several years, including Gina. Anyway, so I think that's a real benefit to the commission and to making sure that our voter education program continues to be tied together with information and expertise on the variety of issues with which we deal. So, it's a great thing for Avery, but also really a great thing for the entire Clean Elections family, and so we're super happy about that. As you can see, everyone, particularly Gina and Avery and Alec and Julian, Mike and Paula have been working on the voter education guide. It will be arriving in mailboxes starting in June 24th. Our goal, our statutory obligation is to get it out the door before early voting starts. And we're, pleased with the participation. We have 35 statewide candidates, 197 legislative candidates. And it's important to note that this year is redistricting. So, for many folks, this will be their introduction to what district they're in. So I think that this is it's an important tool for voters, both in terms of the information contained about how to access their ability to vote, and the statements from the candidates, which are unintermediated. There's it's not an ad. I mean, it's whatever the candidate wants to say, but it has their name on it. It's what they submitted. I think that's important. But I think also important in the fact that we continue to mail it, in addition to the other ways it's delivered. It ensures that there's essentially a baseline amount of information that every voter in the state receives about their ability to participate in elections. Our primary election debates likewise are underway. That's been occupying a lot of everyone's time. We have our legislative debates are being live streamed on YouTube. Last night, I was talking before the meeting to Kathy Herring, who's coordinating this meeting, but she also coordinates, helps do the technical end of our debates, and she and Mike were at our LD12 debate online last night, and the questions were coming in very quickly. Kathy told me we were getting 2 questions a minute throughout the exercise. It's a competitive primary because there are something like 5 Democratic candidates vying for 2 slots on the 2 nominations for the House. So I got to tune into a little bit of it. It's just an example of the fact that the efforts we're trying to undertake to engage voters into the dialogue with candidates, we can see that happening in action. We're also working with, Arizona PBS on the statewide and we've been working a little bit, we're certainly branded into their congressional debates, which was a new thing this year, which we're pleased about. I also want to highlight we will be in Flagstaff next month, working with as part of our ongoing over the course of the last, I would say at least the last 8 years, we've done ongoing work with voters in the Navajo Nation and in the northeast part of the state. So we're pleased to continue that partnership. You can see again that we have a lot of voter education and outreach activities going on. I wanted to highlight and would urge you, if you have time, to take a look at our survey and tools related to the survey. I hope my plan is to next month have our Mike Noble, who is our surveyor or pollster, for lack of a better word, but I hate to use that word, talk to us a little more about where voters are and what they want to hear about. But that data is online. We have Alec developed and Gina developed a hub where voters can go through the data about what voters are saying. We also have recorded and put on our website interviews with subject matter experts. So, Sarah Porter from the Kyle Center for Water, Beth Malone, who some of you may know, who's a well-respected expert on the state budget, Tom Betlak, who many of you may know was a longtime head of the state Medicaid program under Governor Brewer and Governor Hull, and then he worked for Governor Ducey's first term, all on their subject area, water, budget, healthcare. So we've gotten some good press exposure on that, and I think the goal here is to try to take the survey, which tells us a lot about what voters want to hear from candidates. The idea here was, how do we use data to make sure that our voter education program continues to inform voters on the issues and bring voters into the process, because there's and so we think that that's been a successful campaign.
Tom, Mr. Chairman, Tom.
Yes, sorry.
I just wanted to ask a quick question about the survey. Are the results available yet? And where can we find them?
Yes, they're on our website. They are on the website. I can send you the link
Okay.
It's basically our survey hub has our data, and then we've also were able to partner through Gina and Alec with the Center for the Future of Arizona, which
Great.
is a nonpartisan kind of think tank. I think they're affiliated with ASU. I can never remember quite if they're. I think that's right. Obviously, I'm sure if I'm missing anything, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Chan, Gina, if there's other things you want to highlight there, I would defer to you.
Well, let me just say, Tom, in relation to Commissioner Chan's question, I looked at that survey. It's very impressive. It's broken down by political party. It's broken down by geographic areas of the state. It's very interesting to see the different issues that people in different areas of the state are focused on. Obviously, different political parties, we know that they're focused on different, but it's a very impressive survey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, we're happy about that.
Tom, I'm sorry. Were you done?
No. Oh, I just wanted, unless anyone had anything else on that topic, I was just going to really quick hit some of the illegal things. So I want to make sure that more for awareness. Obviously, we have a couple of cases out there that we're involved in, but then, in the last, sort of 45, 50 days since we met, there's been a number of different election-related lawsuits that have come along or been filed. First, there's continues to be litigation over the Senate ballot review. There's been, and then there's sort of maybe not quite litigation, but the Attorney General issued this interim report based on the ballot review, and the county, Maricopa County specifically issued a response to that. I think those are worth perusing. I think that from a participation and confidence in government perspective, which is what the Elections Act talks about, this is we're in some territory where it's not clear that it's just not clear that this is going to wind up, and I think that that's been a point of concern over the course of the last couple of years, and I think it's just important to keep our eye on that as we continue to try to fulfill our role in being conscious of voter concerns and respectful of voters, but also clear that we have confidence in the election administration in the state. I think that that's a really important role for us to play going forward, because we have a unique ongoing institutional aspect to your roles as commissioners, specifically, that is outside of the election cycle, right? So I think it's really important that we continue to keep our eye on those things. You can see there, one quick note, there's the case Arizona Republican Party v. Hobbs. That was a special action. We did discuss in March that essentially seeks to bar vote by mail in the state. Since I wrote the executive director's report, the Republican Party has now taken that suit, which was denied by the state Supreme Court. They've now filed essentially that same suit in Mojave County, and brought in, instead of the state of Arizona, which is who they sued in addition to Secretary of State's office, they sued all 15 county recorders and the Secretary of State's office. Why Mojave County? If you're interested, the idea here is pretty obvious, that the plaintiffs in the case think that there is somehow a better judicial opportunity for them there. It's a little weird, quite honestly. I practice election law in the state, and worked in those areas, as have most of the staff, and obviously Commissioner Chan. This sort of idea that you can shop around to different counties for Superior Court judges is not something that's real. You just don't see that here. This is a sort of a different approach, for lack of a better way of putting it, that again, it tends to say that there's some kind of a different approach to the law in different counties. And in my experience, I've been an attorney for going on 20 years now, and that's not been the tradition in Arizona. Meanwhile, you've got a number of federal court actions with both Democratic and Republican groups. There's a Republican case to try to stop the use of electronic counting machines. There's a Democratic case on 2492, which is the renewed effort to sort of restore, by some people's lights, the proof of citizenship requirements of Prop 200 and some other aspects to voter registration regarding, residency and those kinds of things. And those suits are pending. And then finally, I did want to mention, because I think it's important, although it's not really an issue in Arizona, the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, a 6-3 decision, rejected this a law, part of the McCain-Feingold Act, that says that people could not sort of loan themselves campaign money as a candidate. And if they wanted to recover that money, they had a limited amount and a limited time frame in which to do it. That is now unconstitutional. As a practical matter, I don't believe that in Arizona there's a similar restriction. And in fact, you've seen in the past, we have had candidates who've made personal loans have been able to go back and obtain, under the contribution limits, obviously, contributions, but it's sort of a sign of the overall deregulatory aspect of that. Finally, just real quick, Gina was a facilitator, which we're thrilled about, with the Secretary of State's tabletop exercise on election security. We'll hear a little bit more, obviously, about election security in a few minutes, but I think it's an important to highlight that that work that she's doing, and the fact that she continues to be recognized by the election community for her for her knowledge and skills. We have 2 complaints that are still pending. I really don't have an update that I can provide at this point on those. I can't provide a detailed update because of some of the ex parte and due process issues that are involved in the case law. But suffice it to say, I think we can say we are working on them and making progress. I also want to highlight, and you'll see in the executive director's report, obviously, Mike put together and has implemented with Paula our single party dominant districts. Those are, if for candidates who are running for the legislature, who are running clean, they can allocate a portion, basically the difference between their primary and general allocation to the primary in a one-party dominant district. So, and then we'll talk a little bit more about legislation in the next item, just to be clear. But obviously, Mike and Julian have continued to track legislation, and Paula has. I think we took it off this, but we are moving forward with the move, and so Paula has had her plate full with a combination of voter education, logistics, and making sure that we're getting candidates funded. So it's been a very busy. Certainly, we did cancel last month's meeting, but not for lack of work on the part of the staff, who continue to be busy and I think effective on a day-to-day basis. So I apologize if I've gone on too long, but that concludes the ED report, Mr. Chairman, if you have any questions.
Thank you, Tom. Very busy period. I wanted to just take a minute to join you in congratulating Avery. That's quite an accomplishment to be a Flynn Foundation fellow. Reflects obviously very well on Avery and also on the commission. Are there any other discussion or questions from commission members on Tom's report?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Payton?
Couple of things. First of all, I saw an advertisement for clean elections on my Facebook, and it was very, very good. It talked about this guy being in a maze and trying to find his way through the election conundrum, and he found clean elections, and it brightened his day. And I thought that was a really good advertisement. especially with everything going on about elections. And then secondly, Tom, can you explain basically what's going on about this move? Is it permanent? And is it around the corner or what?
Yeah, just Chairman, Commissioner Payton. Yes, so it is basically around the corner. One of the priorities of Governor Ducey over the course of his administration has been to work to bring state agencies back to the state mall, so the area down around the Capitol, and then to deal with essentially some of the deferred maintenance and other aspects of the plant of the Capitol. So, for example, our building, I want to say, was built in the 50s, maybe the 60s. It has a dumbwaiter in it, just to give you a sense of this era. There are ashtrays in the bathroom, which. And it floods, right? I mean, we've literally had, our server, especially when our server was much more integral before the cloud, would get knocked out by rainstorms. The public records area of the land department, which is really the big tenant in our building, would get flooded. It's so I think it's one of these things where I can't remember if it's DEQ or DOA building. I think it's DOA, right, Mike? Are we moving to? Building wise, DOA or DEQ? I can't remember. Anyway, we're moving to. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll have Paula give you more information on that. She's got all the details on the exact location. Okay. Tom is right. Our building currently is in bad shape, and we need to leave.
So anyway, long story short, Mr. Chairman Kimball, Commissioner Payton, this is a permanent move. We'll be in a smaller space, combined with the pharmacy board. We'll still have a hearing room that we share. I think that the state and Paula, if you want to jump in here, obviously, I think that if you or Commissioner Payton, if you want more details, the goal ultimately is to end up with a smaller footprint for state employees and allow the redevelopment of the mall area. And so, for example, the governor's office has made clear through the Department of Administration that work from home and that kind of flexibility is something that's here to stay. There's some cost savings there, and so we'll have a little different format, a little different layout, a little bit more modernized in terms of whether or not everybody has an office. It'll be more of we'll have more workspaces than fixed offices and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'll just chime in, commissioners, chairman, commissioners, as Tom and Mike mentioned, the state is in the process of condensing space. There are actually several agencies that now permanently work from home, so that they don't even have an office space. Ours will be more on the premises of interactive workspace. But another thing with the buildings, I believe they're going to get demoed. They're very old. All agencies in our building are relocating, and I think all of us, land department, pharmacy board, and clean elections, will be in the same building. The plus for us is we're going to have better security. We've not had the best security in our building. There's been a lot of occurrences that happen, and the building is just very, very old. So we're excited to be in a little bit more modernized building with better security. I think the space is going to work great. We are condensing down space substantially, having shared our public meeting rooms with both agencies is going to be a plus for us too. We'll have more technology as technology continues to evolve. We'll be a little bit better with what we can do. But overall, there's a lot of pluses for the agency being able to relocate, especially the security is a plus for us, as we're just kind of an open fish right there, right across from where everything kind of happens. So that's it.
Thank you, Paul. Any other discussion or questions from the commissioners? Okay, thanks, Tom. Item 4, discussion possible, I'm sorry, was someone's wanted to say something?
No, I just said thank you. I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, that's okay. Item 4, discussion possible action on legislative bills on the topics of elections, voting, administration, campaign finance. To start off this discussion, it's worth noting that today is the 130th day of the legislative session. The Senate is adjourned until Monday. The last time all of us got together, the legislature was in its 74th day of session. Staff, I think, has a brief update on where we are, especially on election bills. And then if any commissioners have any questions, we'll go to those. Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, commissioners. We wanted to highlight specifically, Julian, Mike, and I wanted to, and Avery wanted to highlight the couple of bills that have passed, just as sort of like there have been significant, election bills passed. The big one, obviously, we've talked about is 2492. Another one that's that will be on the ballot is a revamp of the voter ID provisions of what was passed in 2004 as Prop 200. So those have already passed. There's also a bill that's passed that tweaks, I think, appropriately the amount of the due date for campaign finance reports to put it on a fixed Monday instead of like the 15th, where it sort of rolls inconsistently to the next Monday when it falls on a weekend. So so that was the goal of the report, to try to highlight some of those at the front end of the report, which is attached to the executive report. I think, and then I was going to ask, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think there's been some action just in the last couple of days on a couple of bills that have now gone to the governor. At least I'm not sure. I don't think they've been signed. So Julian, if Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, if we could ask Julian to kind of update us on what's happened just in the last couple of days.
Sure, Julian.
Yeah, Chairman, commissioners. So, of course, there hasn't been any action for a month, and then 2 days before the meeting, they like to get it all in. So that's nice of them. Anyway, there were 7 bills put up. 3 of them did not pass, but there were 4 that passed and should be going to the governor. One was SB 1170, which essentially prescribes that the Arizona Game and Fish Department can help people with voter registration. I think 99%, I don't quote me on it, but I think 99% of people register through the DMV. So I don't think this is going to be any sort of major change. You have SB 1329, which requires, if practicable, that the county post how many election bills they receive at their voting location, or how many ballots they receive, and then they post that online so people can go on there and kind of look how many each location received and how many were counted there. So it provides a little bit more transparency in that respect. Then you have SB 1477, which essentially is codifying that the Superior Court transmit to the Secretary of State every month the list of convicted felons, so they can be removed from the voter rolls. And then SB 1008 modifies the criteria that triggers a recount. So before it was basically 0.1%, and now it's going to be 0.5%. Just for example, that would have caused a recount in a couple of the statewide and county races last year and the presidential election. But most of those passed, or all of them passed, with pretty bipartisan support. So if you have any questions, I can try and answer, but that's my summary. Thank you.
Any questions from the commissioners? Thank you, Julian. Anything else, Tom, on this topic?
The one, Mr. Chairman, yes. The one of the bill I wanted to highlight is there's a bill called 2289, and it is the bill that and we talked about it before. This is a bill that, amongst other things, bans election tabulation equipment and requires only precinct voting and requires hand counts of elections in 24 hours after the election ends. It is, we've talked about this, and I've been pretty blunt with you all about it. It's putting aside all the ideological stuff associated with the bill. It's impractical on a level of it. It's just impractical. It will take. I mean, we saw in the Senate ballot review that it took them months to count 2 elections. I mean, it's not, and they're in our ballot with the ballot styles among the counties, the different cities, and all those things. But the reason I highlight it is because, there is a view on, particularly on those who are very active among rallying the, maybe the more, extreme folks on what people are calling election integrity, or what some people call election integrity, to try to tie that bill or perhaps other bills to the budget. And I'm not sure that will itself, have any I'm not sure if that will, work. But the reality is that the margins in the legislature as a partisan basis are 1 vote in each house. And so any bill, especially a bill like that, that's impossible, right? It's a bill that there's simply no way to make it work, right? It's not real legislation. I mean, it's just not. To the extent that these things get tied together, it starts to really, as we get closer to the end of the fiscal year, it's just, it's a matter to keep our eyes on. I also think that particular bill and bills in its style, again, go to, we have not been down to the legislature on this stuff. I think the County Association and Jen Marson have done a remarkable job throughout this session of being able to communicate with legislators about the key practical problems with some of this legislation. I think the issue, though, however, that we have to keep our eye on is, when or if this sort of legitimacy or delegitimizing rhetoric around some of these bills, how we continue to address that. Again, as I said earlier, it's important to be respectful of voters, and to be respectful of voters' time, respectful of voters' information, and then try to communicate with voters about, where things are. So I worry less about communicating with folks who are convinced incorrectly, in my view, obviously, and some in bad faith, that elections are rigged in some kind of way. That's not the group we need to communicate with. The group we need to communicate with is the voters who hear that from people who they trust, even if those are not sources we might find trustworthy, and make sure that we have all of us in the commission. This is an ongoing, obviously many other people are involved in the process here, but we have a role in to make sure that there's a place where they can find information that can bring them along to understand that these kinds of bills are simply, not feasible in any kind of practical way. So just wanted to highlight that one in particular. I think that, we'll see, one of the things, to kind of tie things together here, and I think help lead into our next agenda item. One of the things that one of the reporters who we talked to for the survey noted was there's not, for all the talk about elections at the legislature, in our survey this spring, election administration was not a top 3 or top 5 issue. Yes, there is a perceptible uptick among Republican voters in interest in those issues. The survey does register that, but it's not a top of mind issue. And so, so it's sort of like for most voters, at least for what we can see. So it's important to kind of like, it's just important to try to keep together some kind of consistency around, how we bring folks into the process in a way that's not, politicized. I think we have, but offers them a reflection back of what's really going on. That's part of the reason why the survey makes sense. It's telling us, look, this election fever is not widespread, but on the other hand, it's persistent. And so I just want to make sure that everybody sort of understands where that may be, because I think over time, there's a value to having a nonpartisan institution that can, be effective on these kind of issues over time. So that was my last spiel. I apologize if that went on too long, but I want to make sure that we kind of tie this together.
Tom, could I just clarify that you're saying this bill that would require hand count of ballots to be completed within 24 hours is at this point dead, but could be resurrected as a bargaining chip in the budget negotiations?
Well, I think Mr. Chairman, yes. I mean, I think here's the issue: is that there are a couple of Republican legislators who have made clear, and Julian noted there's some bills that have failed this week, and there have been some bills that have failed throughout the process, and because there are couple of Republican legislators who have, sort of held the line on this election administration issue, and that's been good. The issue on the budget becomes that if you still need to get 16 and 31. So if you dig in on something that's basically impossible, right, like this 2289 bill, which is simply impossible to implement, you may not get that chip, but it does create a kind of an approach to leverage, if you will, right? Digging in on something that simply cannot happen and saying I must have it in order to vote for the budget in this narrow of a partisan threshold can I think have a ripple effect. So, for example, one of the bills the counties have, and we've actually sent some, because we have a little stake in this through Pinal County, and we were asked by the Pinal County reporter to speak about is, how the legislature's contemplated eliminating drop boxes and eliminating and drive-up voting, right? So there's a bill out there, I think it's 2238, that would do that. That bill is hung up right now because there are a couple of Republican lawmakers who have said they think that it's not, that the bill as written is not practical. We're very happy about that, and like I said, we were very pleased with the county association's efforts to lobby on that. The more you dig in on something that's sort of over here, right? The question is, how much does that start to pull on stuff that that's not quite that, but certainly would have an adverse impact on issues that specifically Republican county recorders in Pinal County, in Yavapai County, believe would have a negative impact on voters.
So not to prolong this a whole long time, but so today is the 130th day of what's supposed to be a 100-day legislative session. Is there any way to forecast, or do you have a good guess as to when we're going to get down to some serious budget negotiations and bargaining and things like that? Are we a week away from it? Are we a month away from it? Or who knows?
I don't know. I know that we've surveyed folks as best we can. I'm sure I should say we've surveyed folks as best we can. I think that the last we had been able to gather, there's really no sense of that. I mean, the legislature, I think, has increasingly taken time off during this session and sort of, slowed things down considerably. I think that based on everything we know right now, it would not be surprising to get to June 30th before there's a budget. I mean, I think that the one thing that people who've been around, and certainly Mike and and I guarantee you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Payton and Commissioner Chan all know this as well. The thought would be, we're in a redistricting year, and you have to go campaign, and there are some restrictions on fundraising during that process, and there's time impacts and all that other kind of stuff. All those incentives say get this done, but there's not a whole lot of evidence. I mean, I think it was in April. The last thing that happened on the budget is that the House budget chairwoman put forward a bill that would have, gotten them, sort of started the process of getting some funding mechanism in place for July 1st, and a bipartisan group, not people who agree with one another, but people who are Republicans and people who are Democrats, scrapped it. And there was as far as in public, there's been nothing that we've been able to perceive in public that suggests there's movement there.
Okay,
Mr.
thank
Chairman?
you. Mr. Commissioner Payton?
Yes, I might add that they're allowing them to work from home, the legislators. So they're not stuck in Phoenix if they don't live in Phoenix. And usually that's something motivation for them to be finished. But if I read where there's a couple of them haven't even been to the legislature all year. So that's, that's a less pressure on them to finish it.
Good point, Commissioner. Commissioner Chan, any comments on this topic?
No, I didn't realize they were allowing legislators to work from home. I thought they weren't, which was part of the issue. I think those two legislators have a newborn baby at home, and they had asked to be allowed to attend virtually. And I thought that was not a choice that was given to legislators this year, and that was part of the issue. I don't know if anybody else knows more about that than I do, but.
Anyone else want to comment on that, Tom?
Mr. Chairman, commissioners, I don't know. I don't pretend to know all the details. I think that whether it's by virtue of work from home or virtue of the fact that they're taking big chunks of time off, I think that the point stands that if you have things that allow you to not be in Phoenix, but still be in session, whatever those things are, I think that the point that there's less pressure on you to get done. I think that point's well taken.
I can comment, Chairman, Commissioners. I
Julian?
I believe Amy's correct. It's those two, Representative and Senator, did kind of get an exemption for that, and they can vote virtually, but they have to be in their office.
Okay, thanks. Anything else on this topic? Thank you. Item 5, presentation on election security and recognition and appreciation to Ken Mata, former Secretary of State, Chief Election Security Officer. Ken Mata served for 20 years with the Arizona Secretary of State's office, most recently as Chief of Election Security. He recently left for a private sector role. In his role, he was responsible for critical election security matters ranging from logic and accuracy testing for election equipment statewide to developing best practices for election security. Ken is a state certified election officer, served as a liaison between the counties and the Secretary of State, and served as chairman of the Arizona Vote Count Verification Committee. He has also worked closely with federal and local partners such as the Arizona Counterterrorism Information Center and the Arizona Cybersecurity Task Force. We invited Ken to discuss election security with us and for the public. We also want to take an opportunity to recognize him for his important contributions to Arizona elections. So thank you, Ken, for your extraordinary service. Gina, did you want to say a few words?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Ken, thank you for being here today. As it was noted by Chairman Kimball, obviously you have a very long career in serving Arizona voters. I really can't even begin to find the words to express the impact that you have had on Arizona elections. Most recently, I know that you've been heavily involved both within the Senate audit that occurred. You were there on the ground every day. You are just, so the public knows, Ken Mata is absolutely the most knowledgeable person in the state of Arizona about election security, about election equipment. And you've, again, had a long history in serving Arizona voters well. So we want to thank you for being here today. And then I'm not sure if I should, I know Chairman Kimball announced that we'd like to also recognize and honor your service to the state. We do have a plaque available for you. I have a picture of it that I can send you. So next time we see each other in person, I will deliver that to you, but it is in recognition of your service to the state of Arizona and to Arizona voters and to your contributions to ensuring that Arizona elections are safe and secure and accurate. So we thank you for your service and we look forward to your presentation right now.
Thank you, Gina. Ken, I'll turn the floor over to you for whatever you'd like to say.
Thank you, Chairman Kimball and commissioners and Gina. Wow, those were really nice words. I'm really honored to be here today. I'm still going to try to stay relevant in election security as much as I can. I'm going to go ahead and share. I got a couple slides that'll help me get through it a little bit. There we go. I hope you can see that. Okay. So here's what I'd like to talk about real quick, just three major sections here. I would just like to talk about the good work that the good people are doing in election security across our state. I would like to look at some of the current things we're doing, some of the current security initiatives and what we do to secure elections, and then talk about the future challenges we have coming up. So we have a great community built in Arizona. We've been, several administrations of Secretary of State's office has been working on creating, breaking down silos and getting this whole community to work together. And, you got to remember that over hundreds of years in this country, many thousands of people have been working together to secure elections. This is not a new science. And what I'm talking about here is the players that are in it today. On the county scene, we have election directors and their staff, recorders and their staff, IT and information security professionals, communications leads. Communications becomes such an important part of what we do in protecting elections. Law enforcement at the county and local level. And recently, the Board of Supervisors, we've been really inviting them into the process because, they hold a lot of the power and the purse strings in the counties. And it's good to have them on our side and so that they understand how elections actually work. At the state level, we have the Secretary of State's office, the Clean Elections Commission, of course, the fine work you guys do, Department of Homeland Security, DEMA and the National Guard helping, protect us, and ACTIC, the Arizona Counterterrorism Information Center, which we use as a central hub of reporting for election security in Arizona. On the federal level, CCEC has really stood up in the last few years and really just been super involved at helping to protect elections across the country. The FBI doing just great work, great things with us. We have an elections crime coordinator right now for our area, a specific FBI agent that's assigned to help us with elections and election security. The Election Infrastructure Information Sharing and Analysis Center, it's a mouthful. We call it EISAC, which is a federal agency set up just to share best practices, to share current threats, to just move information laterally across the country in the election space to help us secure elections. And of course, the Election Assistance Commission. As well, we mean on other states and other jurisdictions. You know, like I said, this community it's a big thing. It doesn't just apply to Arizona. Arizona is a part of a larger federal community, and we have a lot of meetings. We have a lot of organizations that help us with that to share those best practices, current information. Academia, you know, we've got from Harvard, Stanford, you know, countless other ones helping us in the science of elections. Our vendors, our partners in security, everybody's, you know, security is a priority with them. And the private sector as well, you know, companies like Microsoft, Facebook, all just a countless number of vendors that are offering services to help secure elections. In Arizona, let's just talk a little bit about some of the things going on. We have a monthly statewide election security meetings where we build that community and we start sharing information and work on common problems that we have together. Spun off from that, in the last few years, we have a monthly election security tech talk where sort of the nerds, you know, the IT folks, the technical people can get together and talk about things that are really too technical for the statewide election security meetings. I want to say in those statewide election security meetings, it's sort of an executive meeting, and we have election directors, recorders, information technology, communications people, all meeting together with our federal partners and other ones, just sharing information. We also have a statewide comms talk spun off where the communications community gets together, and it's sort of a roundtable discussion, and we can take on problems that we face as a community together and share best practices. We have policy development projects that these aforementioned groups can take on. Sometimes we will spin off work groups to accomplish a security objective that we have. And we do it together. We do it as a community, and we do it with consensus. We have statewide tabletop exercises where we practice for the worst election you could have ever imagined. You know, we look at horrible scenarios that could happen in elections, and we start working on how we deal with those things ahead of time before they happen. As well, technical tabletop exercises for the IT side. We will be rolling out county-specific tabletop exercises. I keep saying we, but hopefully we'll see county-specific tabletop exercises being offered from the state. Communication workshops and tabletop exercises also on the radar. Resource sharing. We found out, you know, across the state, there's large counties with resources and mature security programs. There's also smaller counties that have less resources. And so we found out that the larger counties are willing to share their people and their experience to the smaller counties. So if a smaller county needs a help implementing a security feature or program, or if they need help doing a security assessment, that the larger counties are willing to share their people, actually put boots on the ground, get them over to the smaller counties to help them. It's actually a great discovery. And it's a model that I've been sharing on the federal level, and I hope it kind of gets picked up everywhere. We're doing information and advisory dissemination, like our federal partners always tell us when something's going on nationally that we need to be aware of. A lot of threats don't just happen in one small place, but are widespread. So our federal security partners keep an eye on that for us. As well as free services and security products. We like to keep our eyes on that because free stuff, well, we can afford that. And it's always good to have. I'm going to talk a little bit about election security itself. This is my definition of what an election is from a security standpoint. An election is when people of different parties work together to tabulate votes in a controlled environment, using rules that were specifically designed to prevent fraud that they agreed to in advance. And again, this speaks to those hundreds of years in this country that we've been doing elections. And since there was a ballot box to stuff, people have been thinking about ways to thwart fraud and have fair elections. A lot of what we've designed, a lot of those rules we put in place end up being technology independent. It doesn't matter if we're pulling levers or had punch cards or the current equipment we have today. Many of the rules and procedures in place in election security are layers of security on top of our technical layers. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. We have certain public communication strategies. This is what we try to push at the state level out. We want unified messaging. The worst thing that would happen if there was an election incident and the press goes to a county and says, hey, what happened here? And then they tell them something, and then they go to the Secretary of State's office and say, what happened in that county? And we don't know because we haven't talked yet. So we really want to make sure that we're sharing information about what's really happening so we can share the same messaging, consistent messaging. We're trying to really build our communication skill sets. We've had a lot of help from Clean Elections on that. Gina is probably the leading expert in the state about getting out correct information to the voters about what's really going on, what's really happening in elections. We like to amplify each other's messaging. It's been clear to us that the elections community doesn't have the same size megaphone that conspiracy theorists or election deniers have right now. And so we're trying to fix that. We're trying to see what we can do to reinforce and support each other's messaging. We're making sure that we never throw another election having jurisdiction under the bus. That's just simple and straightforward. Even if they're in another state, there's no reason for one elections department to be talking trash about another election department somewhere. And having a plan, having a communication response plan. Our non-public communication strategies, it's really important that and this is about election incidents. If there's problems at a polling place, physical problems, if there's a cyber incident, if there's threats against elections, we want to get this information up the chain to investigative and law enforcement partners and federal intelligence agencies, because what we're seeing may be part of a larger pattern, as I was alluding to before. So it's important, that we get this up the chain and they can disperse that information across, and they may be even able to stop election security issues before they happen in other states if we all share that information. So it's part of our responsibility as part of the larger election security community to get that information out there. Also, getting that information that I was just talking about from them to us. It's important that the Secretary of State and law enforcement have real-time information about what's going on election day, on times leading up to elections, actually at all times, so that we can prepare responses. In Arizona, we use ACTIC, the Arizona Counterterrorism Information Center, as an information hub for our non-public communications. So ACTIC is an organization, and it has representatives from almost every law enforcement agency in Arizona, as well as our federal intelligence agencies. They all have seats there. They ingest tons of information from all sorts of sources and from all over the country, and they analyze that and decide who needs to know about it. So we inform them, our community informs them of any election incidents that are happening. If there's an incursion into a polling place, or if there's somebody with a gun at a polling place, if there's a cyber incident somewhere, it all gets reported to them, and they can disperse that to the people who need to know it. This is what it looks like in a diagram. You really don't need to memorize this because it's pretty much exactly what I described. We'll just skip past that. there's four areas, main areas of election security. There's physical security, and this is not just how we physically like protect our machines and our equipments, that is part of it, but as well as taken on a new meaning lately, and we'll talk about that more. There's cybersecurity, procedural security, and those are those many layers and many rules, many policies that we've created over the years to help secure elections. And objective information security, that's kind of my term, but what that means is public information security. In physical security, we have to protect our voters, our staff, our equipment, and our facilities. This has taken on a new urgency since the 2020 election. Before that, we did not have to prepare ourselves as much. I mean, on our radar wasn't things like violent protests or armed incursions possibly into our tabulation centers or our vote headquarters. We weren't expecting, the amount of threats that we've received since the 2020 election. So, we are concerned about shootings at the polls. We have counties now that are offering de-escalation training and active shooter training to their poll workers. This is new. So we've had a paradigm shift around physical security since the 2020 election. CCEC really lends us a hand with physical security. They come out and do physical security assessments on our facilities. They offer that active shooter training. They offer lots of ideas to us to help us improve our physical security posture. And so, like I said, these are all, we have a lot of new challenges since 2020. Here's some of the statute around physical security requirements. I'm just going to run over this because I want us to all understand like the scope and magnitude of how of the rules in place that help us keep elections secure. So all of our equipment has to be serial numbered and inventoried, stored in a locked, secure location. We can only access it if we're authorized to do so, and that is called the privilege of the principle of least privileged access. We see that all the time. Least privileged access just means that only people that really need to get at something have the permission to get at it. Our equipment is sealed and logged after we programmed it. If we move it around, there has to be 2 people there. Ballots have to be inventoried when we get them and before we distribute them. They have to be available according to least privileged access. We have to store them in a secured location, and access to that location has to be logged. Again, witnessed by 2 people when we move them around. And even the blank stock for our ballot on demand printers, those are the ballots that we print at the polling place for the voters as they need them. Even that blank stuff must be audited and accounted for so it doesn't get in the wrong hands. In cybersecurity, I want to point out that there's 2 types of systems. There's our election systems. These are the systems that actually count votes and control our elections. These systems in Arizona are air-gapped. They've been air-gapped for many years, meaning that they're not connected to any other network, including the internet, including our office networks that are connected to the internet. They're standalone systems. So if you're thinking that somewhere, there's a person out there tapping his keys in another country hacking our voting systems, our actual election systems, the probability of that is almost zero. It's highly improbable. We also have election office networks, which, like most networks, are connected to the internet. And we do things on there like check our email and surf the web, dangerous activities, from a pure security standpoint. And these systems are more likely to have a security problem in it. But just know that if one of our office networks was to get breached, they wouldn't be able to change a vote. Again, keep in mind, the systems that count our votes are not attached to any network. I think it's an important distinction. I always make that distinction because we may see, a press release that there was, this election, this county election office was breached. And it's important to think, wait, was that their election system or was that just their office network? Because there's a big difference. We are getting a ton of federal help through CCEC, other agencies, to help us, cyber protect our office networks. But let me say that in today's new time, with the prevalence of dis, and malinformation, with the physical threats that we're facing, cyber attacks are the least feasible way that somebody could attack an election at this point, in my opinion. Here's some of the laws around cybersecurity. I'm just going to buzz through them. The voting system must be password protected, cannot be connected to the internet. The election management system, which is the election system, must be installed on a system with nothing else on it, and especially no remote access software. It's called out in statute. We cannot transmit our election results electronically from the polling place to our election headquarters. We check that the exact software and firmware versions that we're using are identical to approved versions before we use them. The removable storage, sometimes when it comes time for us to move information in and out of these air gap systems, what we'll do is we'll use what we call SneakerNet, and we'll use like a USB thumb drive, and we'll move information from one system to our election management systems. And these are just rules around that kind of storage. It has to be purchased or received from a reliable source. The Secretary of State's office has been providing those in the last election. They have to be physically secured like most other election equipment. I actually didn't remove this next one. I'm going to talk about that a little later. Keep in mind, it's not a requirement right now. We can only use them once. We have to scan them for malicious software. We have to encrypt them if we're going to physically move them across space and time. Here's some stuff around electronic poll books and ballot on demand printers, only connected to secure networks. Keep in mind, these technologies, we don't vote on these technologies. They're sort of vote adjacent technology. We have to use encryption, industry standard encryption when they communicate. They have to be patched and updated as recommended by the vendor. Again, no unnecessary software on these devices. We look at the data files that are on them, like the voter data files, and we vet them against their actual sources. And this is an interesting one. We only use vendor supplied cables for this type of equipment. This rule came about when we started seeing like USB cables available online that actually came with malware built into them. So the rule is that we can only use vendor supplied cables for these types of equipment. In procedural security, these are the many rules that create these layers of security. I just want to mention Title 16. You guys have probably all seen it. It's a thick book. Gina probably has one on her desk. Show us, Gina. There are just hundreds or possibly thousands of procedures and rules that add layers of security. And this is what I wish the public knew about. I wish the public understood that, when you hear about 20,000 ballots, there it is, there's Title 16, 20,000 ballots from China inserted into the process. People that really know elections on the inside just know how ridiculous that is. It just can't happen because of all of these audit, sub-audit, chain of custody rules that we have in place to control elections. There's just too much to list. I pulled out a few pages of them, and I'm just going to buzz through them. Just, if somebody's watching from the public realm, I just hope you understand the extent that this has been thought out and pre-planned for. Ballot return envelopes are tamper evident. Ballots are mailed out non-forwardable. Only one ballot can be returned per voter. There are two-party retrievers of ballots from drop boxes, meaning that, there's two people going out there to get them. It's not just one person. In Arizona, a voter must show ID at the polls. Voting equipment has to be approved by the state and approved by federal agencies. We logic and accuracy test. In other words, we test to make sure these machines worked and the programs have not been compromised before and after each election. Candidates cannot be poll workers, election boards, the people that decide voter intent, and the people that duplicate ballots are bipartisan. There's always, we're using this buddy system through our whole election process and to create a self-policing environment. Voted and unvoted ballots are sealed at the polls after voting. We check the number of votes cast on the equipment at the polls, and we check that against the number of people that sign in the polls to make sure they match. And that's just an example of one of many of these small auditing procedures we have in there to ensure the integrity of the votes actually collected at the polls or what's represented in our final numbers. Only election officers can train poll workers. We run 0 reports on the equipment and verify them when we first open the polls. We run results report when closing the poll. So we have a record of what that poll collected in votes, a hard copy record that we can always go back and audit. Our ballots and that blank stock is inventoried at the polls. So there's just so much. It just goes on and on. That's the idea of layers of security is that even if you can circumvent one security protocol, one security fortification, that there is another and another and another that can stop you from performing any nefarious act. So real quick about public information security, a little bit more about it. Actually, we touched on it in a second. In this country, voters have sort of turned away from trusted sources of information. Right now, it appears to me that a certain amount of the population is willing to take their information about election security and about whether the 2020 election was secure from politicians and political pundits, but not from those thousands of people that have been working to secure elections across the country, not from the professionals that do this every day. And so we're making an effort to point the public back to trusted sources of information. In Arizona, that's Clean Elections. That's the Secretary of State's office, our county recorders, our county election offices. These are the people that actually perform elections. These are the people who actually know how elections work. And I encourage anybody listening, if you have questions about elections and election security, reach out to these people, and they're more than happy to help you understand how elections work. We found out that pre-bunking is better than debunking. We've seen just so much MDM. I'm going to say MDM, that's misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. We've just seen so much of it. And, putting out the truth afterwards doesn't have the same effect as educating the public beforehand. So when they hear this misinformation, they can say, that's not really happening. We're working with our peers to amplify messaging. I covered that a little bit before. Trying to improve our relationships with media, trying to bring media into our processes more, let them get a look at it, let them understand it, so they can do more accurate reporting. Again, I was saying we don't really have the megaphone that a lot of purveyors of misinformation have. So we're looking for allies. We're looking for influencers that help carry the message about election reality. And then get out public information. We've been doing tremendous work all across the country about helping to educate the public about how elections actually work. In the future, here's my peer into the future. Get out my crystal ball here, but what we're experiencing right now is a loss of election talent. I just, I read a tweet today about another friend and coworker, just excellent election knowledge. I mean, just this person is just amazing, just leaving the industry as well. Right now, it's a hard time to be in elections. We experience threats and hatred. We received the nastiest phone calls and emails. The job was not really a glamorous and praised job in the first place. It doesn't pay well, and nobody in the election community signed up to be abused in the way that we've been being abused since the 2020 election. As a result, it's attrition. We're losing our talent, and they're going to the private sector. They're just getting out of elections. This is going to create a vacancy in our industry that it's going to be hard to replace that loss of knowledge. But as well, if we think that, according to recent polls, between 30 to 40% of the American public believes the 2020 election was stolen, that means, statistically speaking, many of the jobs in elections that those vacancies create are going to end up being filled by election deniers and election conspiracy theorists. The easiest way they could penetrate into the election process would be through political observers. Secondly, as being poll workers. It's a pretty easy point to entry into the process. They could be replacing election staff in our election offices. And they could be holding the highest election office in the land, the Secretary of State's office position. We could see election deniers and conspiracy theorists, that is, people that hold a more politically active ideology, that are pursuing political ambitions other than, and not democratic, not furthering the democratic mission into our process. Insider threat is the thing I'm most concerned about coming up in future elections. As well, like I was talking about before, violence. When we've got to a time where we're having to teach active shooter training to our poll workers, it's a scary time. We don't know what's coming up. I feel we've been very fortunate so far, and I hope we continue to keep up that lucky streak that we've got. One of the largest threats we face is the permanent loss of faith of our voters. I think about countries other than our own who just have begun to accept that their elections are rigged, and the state of those countries, and we don't want to be there. I want to see our faith restored to our voters. There's absolutely no good reason why a single voter should be questioning the integrity of our elections at this point. They've been bombarded with dis, and malinformation about the state of elections, is the only reason they're doubting it. I'm here to say, our elections are good. We like I said, this is not a new science. If we've thought about this, whole communities of people that are good Americans, there are our fellow Americans, our neighbors, our family members, they're election workers. And, they have high ideals, they have integrity. And the fact that we're doubting this community right now is shameful. And And I hope it doesn't continue. So I hope that wasn't too doom and gloomy. I do have, look at this. I had slides on that stuff. Okay. But I do have faith. This is America, and it's a great country. The next generation also, as I speak to young people about this, they seem to have a clear view of what's really going on. They seem to be able to see the demarcation between political messaging and professional messaging. And they seem more willing to listen to trusted sources. So around the corner, I hope this resolves itself. I certainly do. And that's what I've got for you guys. And I thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Ken. It seems grossly inadequate to say thank you to you for your decades of service to the state, to our community, to elections, and you have so much valuable information here. I know that we'll find some way to put this on our website so that those who weren't watching it now will be able to look at it in the future and see how complex the whole topic of election security is. I've been a poll worker for, I don't know, a dozen elections or so, and I can say I knew some of it from working at the polls, but there's so much in there that you said that I had no idea about. I particularly appreciate your definition of an election. I thought that really crystallized the challenges that are faced, and when it comes down to it, it's really pretty simple. We want an election that is fair and that everyone can agree is fair and secure. So thank you for your presentation. Thanks for your years of service to the state. Do any of my colleagues, commissioners, have any comments or questions?
I'd like to make a comment, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Chan?
I was lucky enough to get to work with Ken for the, 4 years that I worked at the Secretary of State's office. And then briefly when I just returned before he decided to leave us. And I just, like you said, Mr. Chairman, thank you seems like it's not enough, but Ken, you have always been such an amazing professional and just such a hard worker. And it's really wonderful to see how it's paid off for you, even if it's a loss for the state. And I'm just very relieved that you're at least staying in the business as a resource for everyone. It's been really nice to be able to see that you're able to communicate to the public and educate them on your own as an individual, in addition to the work you've done for the state and the work you're going to continue to do at Runback. So thank you so much. And Mr. Chairman, I was happy to hear you say that you've been a poll worker for so long. I would encourage everyone who believes in elections and how they're run to become a poll worker. It's not volunteer. I mean, you do get paid. It's not like a ton of money, but I think it's something that's worthwhile to both become educated in how our elections work, as well as, play a very important role on election day. We do have most of our voters using vote by mail. And so our election day work is not as extensive as it could be, but we still need people to be in place to put the poll up, take the poll down, the polling places down, and deliver ballots to Election Central on election night. So it couldn't be more important now. It's always been important, but it couldn't be more important than it is today. So I would really encourage everyone who's on this meeting today to consider doing that. And I just, again, thank you, Ken, for your service, and really happy that you didn't retire completely. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Payton?
Yes, a couple of things. I wonder if you couldn't do a primer for the legislature, a little workshop for them, since they want to be all verbose about, the elections, and maybe we could get a copy of this little presentation to PBS, or, I mean, it sounds like that we could get this information out in the public, where, like you said, they have their ways of getting messages out to poor losers, basically. And it's just a shame that somehow we should be able to get it out to somebody anyway, some public thing. I think many in the public, maybe they grew up at a different time. My dad lived in Jim Wells County in Texas in 1948, Box 13. And so some of these old timers, they remember dead people voting in Chicago and whatever, and they don't realize that things have changed. There's all kinds of security involved. So anyway, that's my input. Thank you for all you've done and continue to do.
Thank you, Commissioner Payton. Any other comments? Thanks again, Ken. We appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the entire commission. I really appreciate you.
Thanks again.
I also got to say, I really appreciate the work you do.
Well, I think we have an outstanding staff, and we couldn't do what we do without them. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item 6, public comment. This is the time for consideration of comments and suggestions from the public. Action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter or rescheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date, or responding to criticism. Does any member of the public wish to make comments at this time? Rivko?
Good morning, Chairman and members of the commission and staff. Although I was not physically present the last 2 meetings, I have observed them. When I saw them online, and I do report to write up reports to a number of people who are in the league. I'm not an official league observer, but a lot of people in the league who are very concerned about this issue. I really wanted to especially thank the commission. The last 3 meetings where you had election professionals, the county recorders, and this morning with Mr. Mata, have been absolutely outstanding. And I know one of the things that I've been telling people that I learned from one of the presentations, I can't remember which one, was how important it is for the small counties to have the resources to be able to attract and retain people who are knowledgeable about election security. Things are very technical now. And with small budgets, even if they hire an expert, how do you keep them from going to the private sector, because you can't match the pay? I think that's an element that needs to be stressed. I'm just wondering if those interviews might be made available. I mean, I know anybody can watch a commission meeting online, but with all due respect, they are, an hour and a half or 2 hours. But I wondered if those interviews might be posted as a way to get more people to observe them. The same thing with Mr. Mata's presentation today. And then I have only one other comment for Mr. Mata's presentation, which was absolutely outstanding. There are so many acronyms, and I am not in the election community, even though I've been a poll worker for years, and as a league member, we study elections and so on. But I would hope that the presentation, if it's available online, would ensure that there is like a list of acronyms, because there are pages you showed, Mr. Mata, with initials only, and I kept writing madly, and I didn't get them all. But tremendous information that I hope is shared much more widely with the public. And again, thank you all, both the commissioners and the staff, for just continuing to do what you do. Your work is more and more important every time. And I appreciate everything that you do as just a voter and citizen. And thank you. Have a good day. And
thank you, Ms. Knox. Tom, is there anything you'd like to say about how these presentations can be accessed after the fact? Are they archived on our website?
Yeah, so I think I can, especially because the presentation itself is on the agenda. The presentations are on our website. I hope to, within the reasonable amount of time, I think we can pull them together in some kind of a package that plays them. The presentations, Rivco is right, and the goal of these presentations is to be able to have a public record available, and Commissioner Payton's right, to folks that can come and get, who want to drill down on some of these issues like Ken was discussing, to make that available and to piece it out in a way that, is more accessible. I think the core here, and just to, again, I think this is, just all, if you look at this agenda and what we've discussed today, the goal here is to, establish a bank of resources that is not partisan, that doesn't turn over with an election, that is not driven by the election calendar of politicians, but the election calendar of voters. Because if you listen to what Ken is saying about public information, the public information sphere is very tenuous right now, and it's quite clear that election officials, of which we all are one, whether or not we realize it or not, are in a process of trying to determine what is the best way to move forward. We've seen privately funded efforts. We've seen publicly funded efforts. We have, as Ken mentioned, the Secretary of State has a communications group that meets. So one of the things that we can offer that is unique, really, I think, in the whole country at this point, is a nonpartisan resource bank for this information that's optimized. Everybody, and we always hear this from folks, their website is great. Alec has done a wonderful job of keeping our web content, as best in the state. This is a model for how you start to have real, tangible, nonpartisan information for voters to ensure that we can have a bulwark against this misinformation and disinformation problem.
Okay.
That's a very long answer.
No, thank you, Tom. Let me also add that anyone watching this can send comments to the commission by mail or email at ccec@azcleanelections.gov. At this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan. Is there a second?
I second. This is Galen Payton.
Thank you, Commissioner Payton. I'll do a roll call on our motion to adjourn. Commissioner Chan?
I vote aye.
Commissioner Payton?
Aye.
The chair also votes aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.